Well, we've got a couple of questions that came in advance that we haven't covered as yet, and one was from someone who's running an accommodation business, which is currently on the market. They've kept the names, addresses, phone numbers and dates of stay of all the guests that they've had over the past 7 years, so 7 years worth of data. At the very least, they would like to pass on to the new owners the details of the guests who have stayed with us on more than one occasion. And certainly they'd like to pass on details of guests who have booked to stay in the future. In relation to the obligation to guest privacy, what records can they pass on to the new owners? Anthony?
Well, basically the way privacy legislation works is that you can use and disclose the information for the primary purpose you collected it for. So clearly they collected the information to provide accommodation service, or for a secondary related purpose that the individual would reasonably expect. So it seems to me in this case, certainly the people that have booked to come and stay at the place, I would argue that's almost the primary purpose that they need to disclose to the new service provider, so those people don't turn up and are not expected. So that would seem to be a worse outcome than disclosing their information. But even for the people who are regular customers, I think that probably there is an argument that would be a secondary related purpose that they would reasonably expect. So that if all the new owners are going to do is let them know that there are new owners and that they then would have to comply with the marketing laws, which mean that on whatever they send them, they'll have to put, if you don't want to be contacted by us again, tick this box, then that's all that'll happen, basically. They'll get the one notice from them, and if they don't want to hear from them again, they'll be able to tell them that. So it seems to me that would be permissible under the privacy legislation, presuming that they're covered by it, and if their turnover is less than $3 million, they're not. But it's just general good business anyway that would be the case. And really, the real secret with privacy, people don't like surprises. So that the real key is the way you collect the information is to tell people what you're going to use it for, who you're going to tell, and those sorts of things. And then the way the legislation works is that those things are done okay, provided you've been upfront with people at the beginning. So if they've covered that off, then that shouldn't be a problem, basically.
Which leads to another question that came in earlier, which was about, we all do it, something comes up, the box says, do you accept these conditions? And of course, I don't know how many people in the room actually read everything that's in there. You just go, I accept because I'm in a hurry. So what are we agreeing to when we say I accept or I agree? Maybe Bartek, with mosh ticks, if I go I agree, what am I agreeing to?
You're agreeing to hear about a lot of great events coming up in your area. So, generally for those, where you have those disclaimers, it's about what can that company do with your information. So can they use your data to target particular offers from that company? What you need to be aware of is where they share that data with third parties, and whether it's related third parties or totally unrelated third parties. That's usually one of the big concerns there. It goes into, I suppose one of the biggest ones there is social networks. Social networks are probably not known greatly for their privacy controls, and ultimately what you're doing signing up to a social network is you're giving them your data to target you, for advertising and other bits and pieces. So that's just something to be aware of. But generally it's about what can that company do with your data.
And Troy, from Australia Post, 34,000 employees, bringing in USBs, downloading all sorts of things, wanting to sign up programs. Does any of that kind of thing worry you from either a privacy or a security perspective?
Yeah, that keeps me up at night. Absolutely. And again, I think I talked earlier about the traditional kind of perimeter where an organisation stops. It's irrelevant these days with things like USB certainly, but social is a great example. So even if you block access to Facebook or whatever it is from your corporate network, people will still access it via their smartphones or their iPad or whatever it is these days. Block that, they'll then find something else to use it, and so it's kind of irrelevant. Which is where it then becomes much more about education, to be honest. So, Australia Post was the first organisation to sign up to Stay Smart Online. Every user has the Stay Smart Online icon on their desktop. Double click it, goes straight to the website. We deliver a whole lot of practical tips for our people that they can use great services like that. So I think that the days of stop block are kind of gone now, and you really do need to invest heavily in educating your people.
Anthony, the I agree section, is that where all the privacy information should be?
Well, I guess from our point of view, what the responsibility is to take reasonable steps to notify people about what you're going to. So my view would probably be a little more rigorous than that and say that there should be kind of just-in-time notices as well, so it's not one-off, and so that whenever someone's doing something, there's some kind of notice. Obviously, you don't want them to be bombarded with pages and pages of information every time they undertake a particular transaction. But I don't have jurisdiction over the private sector by and large, but if we did, I think to be perfectly honest, the regulators have dropped the ball slightly on those privacy notices. I don't think lots of them are reasonable steps to inform people what you're intending to do or who you're intending to tell, because they are 35 pages of legalese. So the Victorian government organisations that I regulate don't tend to do that. They do actually, I think because we are a bit more rigorous, they do actually, by and large, do tell you what they're going to do with the information and who they're going to tell. The private sector, I think, could be pulled up a bit more about, okay, if you have your disclaimers in that legalese to, satisfy yourselves, do a version of it that people can actually understand. Otherwise, I don't think you've taken reasonable steps to notify them. So I don't think that's been tested, certainly not in Australia, before a court. But if it was, I think that it's difficult to see how it is taking reasonable steps to really notify people to put multiple pages of gobbledygook. So I don't think people should take too much comfort if they've just done that and thinking that they've actually complied with the law. I'm not sure they have. So.
Troy, you've worked on the national policy front as well, one of the founding members of the Australian IT Security Expert Advisory Group, very long title, providing IT security advice, and I like this one, to the Critical Infrastructure Advisory Council on Australia's national critical infrastructure. There's a lot of criticals in there. What kind of things are on the national agenda from that perspective in really, what are people talking about at that level?
So I think a lot of it is the applicability of some of these things. So yes, legislation is absolutely important and it's a vital part of what we need to do, but it's not the be all and end all. Again, to the point just then, me as a user, so forgetting my job, if I sign up for a Facebook or something like that, there's no way I'm going to read those 60 pages, and Apple's horrible, and so I'll agree, ignore that, but then the first thing I'll do is go in and actually play around with the settings and try to find out what I can and can't do, rather than just accepting the default. So that's kind of, it's talking about things like that we can make people more aware of. There are some good privacy settings in Facebook. If you go and turn them on, they're just not turned on by default. And very similar with a lot of other services. And so look, that's important. Certainly, a lot of discussions about things like cross-border sharing of information is a big challenge. There's no doubt about that. I think we as a nation are understanding what is important to us better. What is our critical infrastructure? What is important in the case of emergency? And so, what are the steps then that we need to take to protect that critical infrastructure as an economy? That's very important. I think, and the last one is that I'm passionate about, I guess, is how to simplify everything, because there's a whole bunch of information out there, which is great, but people can't get access to it. People don't understand it. I'm not going to sit down and read a 20-page document, but I will read, the eight words sent in a tip to me via email every day. So how do we find those simple things like the Stay Smart Online service that we can use?
Well, that's a good throw to you, Bartek, I think, as the Stay Smart Online ambassador, amongst other things. So what are the top tips that you would give business owners around how do you protect yourself? What should they be doing?
Sure. So the Stay Smart Online basic website is run by the Department of Broadband and the Digital Economy, and it provides a set of practical tips that you can take as consumers and business owners that are interacting with the internet. So we all need to be online. We hope that our lives are enriched by accessing a lot of these services, but it's being able to be online with confidence. Whether those tips are around using different passwords, using strong passwords. I know many of us are very complicit in reusing the same password over and over again, because that makes things a lot easier for us, but there's some trade-offs there. It's around how we share information on our social networks, how we collect information as businesses. So there's a lot of really practical tips there, and I really recommend check out the site. There's a section there for small business owners in particular, which covers really practical things that you can do to, first of all, improve your ability to service your customers online and make sure that your consumers are dealing with you with confidence.
Alex, what would be the top tips you would give small business owners in particular?
The biggest one for mine would be actually consider governance. Governance for most small business owners is seen as the realm of big business, and I think take a step back and actually consider your own governance and your own processes, and actually if you drill that down, start to almost work through every line of your P&L and say, what can go wrong and how can I address that in advance? So plan, prepare, test. I think they're probably the three things: plan, prepare, test. Make sure that there's accountability for any providers that you are engaging with, but ultimately accept that it comes back to yourself as the business owner or director, and just keep reiterating those words to yourself: plan, prepare, test. And if you do that very regularly, you'll be in a much safer environment than you were previously.
Troy, what are the sort of things you're telling your team?
So two things probably. One is educate yourself. So congratulations to everyone that's attended today. You clearly are educating yourself. But I think this world changes and evolves at a speed that is quite amazing. It's impossible for me to keep up, and I live it and breathe it, right? And luckily in my day job I've got people that are out there trawling things and giving me summaries and so forth. So I'm lucky from that respect, and I still find it hard to keep up. Having said that, there are some really simple things that you can do, like the Stay Smart Online service, but also there's plenty of others out there. So I think spending some time to really understand, and it doesn't need to be at a really deep level, but I think reading one document every month is kind of really useful. The second one then, as a small business owner, and that's obviously what my wife is at home, is to expect more from your providers and partners. So ask those questions. If you're using Australia Post to do delivery, ask your Australia Post account manager, how are you keeping my data secure? And hopefully you get the right answer. Let me know if you don't. And so I think starting to raise the bar, expect more as a small business owner. You don't need to be the expert in everything yourself. You should be able to rely on those people that you are paying for their services to keep your data secure, keep your customers secure, etc. So I think raising the bar with expectations is a big one, and that's certainly something that we're doing in Australia Post. All of our providers we are talking to more and more regularly.
And finally, before we use our links, Anthony, what's the one piece of advice you'd like to leave people with?
I think basically what's already been said about preparing and planning and just thinking about it. I mean, the big data breaches and investigations we've conducted really have been because the human factors failed. So, and it's not just electronic information either. So to keep in mind that if you've got things on paper, that things can go wrong as well. One of the most celebrated things that have happened at the time that I've been Deputy Privacy Commissioner was a very large government department selling a filing cabinet in disposing of furniture and it ending up in a second-hand shop in Hoppers Crossing full of corrections files with graphic photos of deaths in custody and all sorts of things in it, and they found out when Channel 9 rang them. So that's, I can say that because it is in the public domain. So that's borne in mind too. So it's, things can go wrong, probably will go wrong. So it's best to try, to the extent you can, of thinking about what they are and what you can do about them beforehand. So, yeah.
Well, on behalf of everyone today in the Centre and Deakin University, can I thank our panellists? It's been very enlightening. Dr. Anthony Bendall, the Deputy Privacy Commissioner of Victoria, Troy Braben, Chief Information Security Officer with Australia Post, Alex Warndell, the Executive Director and Co-Founder of myempire.com.au, and Bartek Marnane, Stay Smart Online Ambassador and General Manager of Mosh Dix. And thanks everybody for joining in, and your questions have been wonderful. Thanks everyone.